Here.
Sorensen.
Here.
Split.
Here.
We have a quorum.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Luke Hatfield. I have the joy of serving as a missionary to Ripon College. I've been serving there. This is my 13th year, and so it's great to get to come and do the invocation with you all. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, King Jesus, mighty Holy Spirit, it is kind of an interesting thing that you are sovereignly in control of all things, and yet you allow us to be part of the process. And so I just pray that you would give us wisdom, give these leaders wisdom, give everyone in this room wisdom to be able to do their duties well, to work diligently, to serve well, to think well. God, thank you for the many people's lives that they can serve through their work here at the city. And so I just pray, God, that you would help things to go smoothly, that you would give us the ability to truly listen to one another, to understand and to be understood, and that you would guide our decisions. Thank you that you love us and you're with us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda? A motion by Doug, second by John. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is a current city issue, knowing no action may be taken tonight. I ask that you keep it civil and respectful and within 5 minutes. However, discussion of personnel or individual members of the Common Council shall not be permitted. I expect you to be respectful. Council to treat the citizens with the same respect. Before you begin, please state your name and address for the record. First, we have Luke Dretsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At 412 Sandmar Drive here in Ripon, Wisconsin. Two reasons why I'm here, and I'll be brief. First, I'm a member of the Plan Commission, so I just want to provide my insight as being one of the no votes on the PUD. And of course, second, given that in the close proximity of this project, I just believe it's necessary that I provide my concerns. First is, at the Plan Commission, we discuss a lot about runoff, stormwater, groundwater issues. There is belief that, at least from the majority of the commission, that assurances have been made and that they'll be adequate. However, I don't have to really share with you, for those who have either lived in the community for a while or have even experienced living over there, the potential not only stigma but effects of flooding in that area. We can go back to 2008, 2009 flooding, the standing water that was there. Now, not only then, but also now, whenever there is a lot of rain, the standing water in this proposed plot. So I have concerns, of course, with the buildup of that land, how that might push, of course, on the runoff, maybe leading to later buildups, not only on Ardmore, but also on, that is going up smack dab right in R1 residential area. And I don't gotta also tell you that the middle school and high school is 3 blocks away, as well as Barlow Park is about 3 or 4 blocks away. And put sidewalks on Pleasant Street towards the school, especially given the commute that happens during school time. I mean, I see it every morning. A lot of people that live over there see it. People who drop off their kids at the middle school and high school will end up driving all the way down Pleasant Street, cutting up Sandmar, and then going over by Barlow if they have to drop off their younger kids there. And they're always whipping through there, and I don't think the traffic concerns have been adequately addressed in the PUD. And then lastly, I just don't believe that it confines with the plan of the city. All the neighboring lots right there are R1, single family housing, and then we're throwing R3 just right in the middle of it. It doesn't seem to fit sort of that zoning plan that has been necessary for that area. So for those reasons, those are my concerns, as well as just the buildup in that community. A lot of the R1 houses are going up, and one of our considerations on Plan Commission when we adopt a PUD is consideration for neighboring developments, that being the San. It is could potentially affect the further progress that has been being made over there. There's currently two or three houses going up. I don't know if this will create additional stigma in the area to not want to further build. So for those reasons, the stormwater concerns and the R3 zoning in that area around R1 is why I voted no there, and I just asked for the council to provide additional consideration to that on their vote tonight. So thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council.
Next is Matt Miller.
Evening, Matthew Miller, 543 Ardmore. I was at the Plan Commission meeting Wednesday night, heard Luke speak now. I share many of his concerns, but other neighbors showed up expressing and the same concerns as he just brought up. I found it very interesting during the after comments the other night that there appeared to be quite a bit of doubt amongst the Plan Commission members, and even such to the point where you could not get a second to the motion. And more discussion took place, and eventually it was passed. But I believe that it's the duty of the council to look out for the citizens that elected them. And many citizens have serious doubts and reservations about this. You only get one chance to get this right. If you have any doubts about traffic, stormwater, the fit for the neighborhood, which on all these counts I agree totally with the comments Luke just made. Any other doubts, safety, infrastructure, it's a real concern on my behalf. Now is the time for you to listen to your doubts. If this is a good, solid project, it'll continue in a revised form once your doubts are addressed. Don't rubber stamp it. I was here in 2007 when this subdivision came to be, and it was shoved through. Nobody listened to everything that everybody said. It was rubber stamped, and you all know what happened. So basing your future traffic concerns on the possibility of that street being extended might happen, might not. Nobody knows. But like I say, this is your one chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So moving into our first agenda item, annual report. Ashton?
Hi, everyone. So yeah, this is our second annual report. It's the rec department. For our next page is the mission statements. Those are exactly the same. They have not changed for both the senior activity center and the parks and recreation department. Still holds true that we're maintaining the park amenities, whether that be going through all the parks with Alan and noting every little thing that needs to be changed or done, approved upon. I feel like we've worked on bathrooms and everything else that are involved in the parks, and keeping them as they should be. And that was actually one of the main things I remember from when I first started at my interview. Parks to just be maintained. A lot of people said, don't add anything, just maintain them. So working hard to do that for parks, and then programming for senior activity center as well. Can't forget about that. Christine did an past year of adding new programming that goes well with our mission statement, whether that's health, wellness, education, tons of education, lunch and learns, whatnot. So the mission statements hold true. Energy Community Tree Planting Program. We were awarded that grant earlier last year. With that, there were 39 trees planted. The 55 was, that was the total trees planted in the parks in 2024. SSM Health community members, and then the grant program. The Knowles Nelson Stewardship Grant awardees, we were awarded that grant in 2024 for the Selfridge Park project, as you all know. We added, thanks to Alan and DPW, 625 cubic yards of wood chips were placed in 4 playgrounds. That is a lot of wood chips, and that is one indicator of just something that was neglected for a while. You shouldn't have to put that much wood chips in 4 playgrounds every year. So typically it's like 3 inches every year you add for safety standards. So from now on, that will be, it's just 3 inches a year, not 625 cubic yards of wood chips. The approval of the city's first inclusive playground, as you all know, and then the Horner Park restoration enhancements with the furnishings being installed this spring. This is specifically for rec, for sponsorships and collaborations. So this has actually grown a ton since last year. Last year, I think there were 5 sponsorships / donations, and now there's 20 more than there were last year. This was because of our added events and programs, and same with collaborations too. So we added a couple of events, which was the reason why we had so many collaborations and sponsors. And yes, we had 24 more collaborations as well from 2024, which is awesome. Senior Activity Center, it was actually pretty similar to last year. Christine works with around the same organizations. The one big thing that was different was the anonymous donations that went towards a lot of the senior trips. So the seniors were able to go on a lot of day trips, and the bus costs were covered, so the seniors had a reduced rate to go on those trips, which was awesome for them. And then she works a lot with the college, library, Hunger Task Force comes every month, whatnot. She does a lot with these organizations that are here. Park reservations. This didn't change too much from last year. Baseball and softball fields, they were just reserved 65 more times, so 483 total reservations of the fields from March until October. In soccer fields, there's just a school nearby that uses those fields. But park shelter reservations, it was a bit less than last year, but not too much. It was only 8 difference. But the Senior Activity Center was reserved 9 more times. So last year it was only reserved 5, I can't do math, 5 times, sorry, 5 times. So I don't go out and promote it, I guess, but based on people's feedback, the word kind of spread that we do offer reservations. It's more or less just on the weekends. So yeah, that's growing, which is awesome. The building is beautiful and should be used on the weekends, and people have loved using that. The rec department and senior activity center revenue versus expenditure. So obviously our budget increased last year. I won't run through every single one of these numbers, but when it comes to the senior activity center side of things, if you're wondering what in the world were they spending money on, that is the trips. The trips obviously cost more money for them to attend, so that's the coach bus and food, the venue, wherever they may be going. And then same with the expenditure, trips and luncheons. Christine, if I am correct, there was 46 lunch and learns last year, so 46 meals were fed to the seniors, and that's obviously there's a cost of every meal, other than there's one sponsor by Eden Senior Care every month. But it did, our revenue was, we did a good job with keeping the revenue similar to what we were spending when it comes to trips and programming and whatnot. The only thing that was different from last year to this year is the tree and donation and grants. So we didn't have any donations or grants last year for the trees or the year prior. And in 2024, we had $7,565 donated for trees specifically. Okay, rec programming numbers. So this past year, obviously you guys know I was gone on leave for 10 weeks. So Max was here for essentially 3 months out of the year. So we added a few programs. I kind of let him, I just kind of like handed him the reins, and not fully, but kind of like, here, if you want to run some programs, start something new. Essentially anything we do in the rec department, programming wise, is new. We're only 2 years old. You can't, like, there has been failures, yes, because I can't find words, but we fail when it comes to programming due to the fact that the community may not receive a program well, or that's going to happen. So even though we have higher numbers than last year, that doesn't mean that everything was absolute success and flying colors. I think the year prior, there was roughly around 400-ish participants, and this is a rough estimate, around 1,400. I don't have the exact number because I don't have a clicker person that just sits at events or programs and clicks away at how many of items that we handed out when it came to events, not programs, that I based the number off of. So that's a rough estimate. As well as the seniors, that number increased as well. Christine, again, did an awesome job of bringing more. She loves to build relationships with the seniors, which brings more participation. And then, not as important, but rec desk accounts. That means that we had 609 people create account through our software, whether that be through reservations, programming. Some people are just interested in seeing what's going on. So that's what that is, through our software. And then the Senior Activity Center check-ins, that means the seniors going up to the iPad, typing in their name, saying, "I'm here." That's what that is. So this is actually it's low. Some seniors, either the iPad's not working or something may be happening where they're like, "Oh, my name won't work." So it's not totally accurate. This is a low number, so there are more check-ins than 6,921, but it's still great to see however many seniors are using the building. And the Senior Activity Center programming, Christine added quite a bit of programs. There was 15 new regular and exercise programs, as well as the day. Fabulous at adding those programs in. We were full every trip. I think roughly 55 to 60 people per trip. All the buses were full. They thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, she did a great job. There's 2 positive comments there. So that's specifically for the Murray Park bunny hop. And that is actually happening in a few months. Again, I do that with the early bird Kiwanis. And this is like an example of what we can do that adds to community events already, because the Kiwanis, they did a drive-through Easter egg event because of COVID. That's why it was drive-through. So I talked with Adam when I first started here, and we wanted to add more to the Easter event, so I talked with them, and that's how we came up with the Murray Park Trail Bunny Hop. So this year, along with the kids hopping along the trail, they're also getting an Easter egg hunt as well. So it just keeps building as the years go on, so it's awesome. And then Senior Activity Center reservation, a lot of the comments I get after reservations are similar to that one. They just love using the building, so. And looking forward, volunteer growth, I don't use a ton of volunteers. Senior Activity Center side of things, that place has volunteers running through its veins. They're used for any program, any event, trip, whatever it may be. There's always volunteers helping out. But when it comes to the rec side of things, I don't have as many volunteers, and that's one thing that I want to work on. Obviously, it's not always easy running a program with just myself or with the help of Christine, but if I had volunteers and help, I could increase my numbers. For example, soccer fundamentals, when I have 22 to 3-year-olds, it's pretty hard to direct them all by myself or with the help of just even another person. So having people help out and volunteer, I'm trying to work hard this year on adding that to help not only myself, but also to expand our programs and numbers and whatnot, so I can grow that. The transformative park improvements that we went over, or I guess we didn't go over the Murray Park Quad project. That's one of them. The park signage project. So that's actually files have been sent off, and we're working on them to the high schools. So the park signs will be done this spring. The high school shop class is working with their CNC router in our design that we sent off, and they will be creating those, and then DPW will be installing them. The playground and then the Selfridge Park project. Community-centered initiatives, just strengthening partnerships with local organizations, just growing that list of collaborations I had from adding 20 people this past, or 20 organizations or businesses this past year, growing that to even more this year. That's one of my goals. And then lastly, building on successes. My goal this year is quality over quantity. Yes, I want to have more programs, but I want to make sure that they're actually quality programs that we're providing for Ripon. Like I said, when you're still a newer department, everything's not going to go perfectly fine when it comes to programming. So any program we add, it might not work. You just push it to the side and then build off of that. And yeah, so we're growing in that way. And there's some pictures of tree planting and the 5K, pickleball. The seniors are reading to the elementary kids. We have a quilt group, and it looks like a lunch in there. So, yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Sorry, that was a lot in a very short amount of time, but.
Great work. I mean, this is just phenomenal what you've been able to do, and the community connections that you had. Are you able to share anything that you're dreaming about, as far as you mentioned some future programs? Or I know that, you'll get some feedback and that you'll be developing as the year goes along. But is there anything more you want to, I mean, you already kind of talked about building on what you're already doing and making it stronger.
Yeah. Year is like when we had the like Touch a Truck event last year, like adding what can we do this year to make that event better, run smoother, whatever it may be. It ran perfectly fine and it was amazing, but like what can we add to things like that, and similar to like the bunny hop. So that's, I don't like have any like particular like this program, heck yeah, I'm so excited, but it's more of just adding to what we have and improving, and yeah.
Thanks for what you presented. That's phenomenal.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Well, thank you, Ashton.
Thank you.
Forward to next year's report. All right, now is the planned unit development overlay zoning for SC Swiderski project. This would be an R3 underlay for a PUD. This is brought forward by the Plan Commission. They held their public hearing on February 19th and voted 4-2 in favor of approving to the Common Council for this PUD overlay with R3 under district. We do have a couple people here from MSA to answer questions on the
We'll have SCS present first.
oh, yes, so we'll come to the MSA staff soon, but we're going to have SC Swiderski come up and give us their presentation on their project.
Hello again. Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening to discuss our proposed SCS Ripon project. I am Courtney Wolf, the Development Manager at SC Swiderski, and with me tonight are Madeline Check, our Development Design Specialist, and behind me is Travis Blasey, our Planning Specialist, and then here's the rest of our wonderful team that works out of our corporate office in Mosinee, Wisconsin. A little bit about us. SC Swiderski is a housing provider and community developer. We offer personalized solutions to cities and communities with housing needs. We are steadily expanding throughout Wisconsin, as you can see here. We're currently managing over 3,000 apartment units. Our company upholds an above-average occupancy rate of 95% on all of our stabilized properties. SC Swiderski's proposed housing project consists of 64 multifamily rental units spread over 6.5 acres of undeveloped land. Tonight, we are proposing R3 zoning with the planned unit development overlay. We feel this is the best suitable zoning for the project, complementing the traditional zoning while still utilizing the PUD overlay to allow for greater density. This zoning fits with the city's strategic plan to address the current and future housing needs of Ripon. The future SCS Ripon will be located in the Sandmar Village subdivision. The housing community will include a healthy mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units with 16 different floor plans. Each unit has a private entrance and patio or balcony and in-unit laundry. We have on-site property management for convenience and ample parking of over 3 spaces per unit.
All right, so then to go a little bit more in depth into our site layout, as Courtney stated, we have 3 different building types on the site. Along the public streets, we have our 1-story Bedford building. These buildings have individual driveway access, and each unit will have individual rollout trash services. Our primary entrance to our other multifamily buildings is to the south of our site on Pleasant Street. As you drive in, you're first greeted with our property management office, which our on-site leasing personnel will be working out of. This office is where tenants can access their mail, and we have included a community patio for tenants to use to the south of that building. Driving into our site to the west is our 2-story Huntington building. As you drive further along, you can see we have 2 of our 2-story Fulton buildings with their designated detached parking stalls in the middle. And then our site has been specifically designed to consider snow removal, garbage pickup, and mail delivery. Here's a bird's eye rendering of our site. Keep in mind that these renderings are not reflective of our proposed landscaping plan, but these are an accurate representation of our site layout and our building materials that we've selected.
Do you want to speak a little more? My understanding is, speaking of landscaping, that there's some more landscaping that makes it look, I would say, a little bit classier from the road. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we have submitted a landscaping plan, and I believe that it's within the packet, but I'll touch a little bit on our landscaping later in the presentation, but we've included a whole bunch of different types of trees, and we used R3 for point values as a baseline to work out of, and we tried to get as much trees and shrubs as we could on the site.
Thanks.
Thank you. And then here's a bird's eye rendering from Pleasant Street looking into the site, and then below then, here's an aerial view from the intersection of Pleasant Street and Village Lane. And then, as previously mentioned, we've included a community patio area to the site specifically for tenants to use. This amenity has been very popular on some of our previous sites. And then to go a little bit more in depth on the specific buildings that we've selected for this site, this is our Huntington building. We have one of these. This building is 2 stories tall, has a total of 8 units that are all 2 bedrooms. This and all of our units on our site all include private entrances and in-unit laundry. But these units include stainless steel appliances, an attached single-car garage, and it provides a variety of different styles of floor plans, including upper units and townhome style units. This is our Fulton building. We have 2 of these on site. This building is 2 stories tall and has 20 units with a range of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. These units have single-story living, so you're either on the first or the second story. Each unit includes their own balcony or patio area, and these units are offered at a lower price point in comparison to the other 2 buildings because they have a detached single-car garage instead of attached. And then lastly, this is our Bedford building. This is a single-story apartment building, and we have 3 of these on the site that range from 4 to 6 units per building. Each building has a variety of 2 and 3 bedrooms, and all units have an attached 2-stall garage with private entrances and then upgraded stainless steel appliances. On the back side of that building, each unit has its own patio space that are all separated with privacy dividers. And then here are some images from our already built apartments. These images closely reflect some of the finishes that we've selected on the site. And as you can see, we provide ample storage, lighting, high quality materials, appliances, and fixtures.
Our apartments become part of our portfolio, so we are invested in taking care of our assets. So we utilize our own maintenance teams to perform all of the regularly scheduled maintenance items that are listed here quickly and efficiently for our tenants. Our leasing teams are highly experienced and professionally trained, so all rental applicants go through a comprehensive screening process, offering peace of mind that you know that your neighbors went through the same exact income, background, and credit review processes that you did. SCS offers many online conveniences as well, which are very popular these days, such as virtual tours, online payments, and maintenance requests. Our rent rates are very inclusive, so they include heat, water, cable, sewer, and Wi-Fi, and the tenant only receives 1 bill for electricity, which is quite small because Swiderski does cover the heat portion of that. Our rents are market rate, so if these units were to open today, the rent range would be from $1,060 to $1,875. Data taken from our central Wisconsin properties gives insight into the number of adults and children typically living in our apartment communities. The central Wisconsin area includes 486 units with a total of 728 individuals. Each property averages 1.5 adults per unit. Of these occupants, 6% are children. Applying these metrics to the SCS Ripon development, we could project approximately 4 children residing at this location and 1.5 adults per unit.
So then here are some of our planning considerations for this site. So in terms of landscaping, the landscaping plan was done with referencing R3 point value requirements that were called out in the city ordinances. We exceeded requirements for the building foundation plantings by 123% and the street frontage areas by 115%. We increased our point value standards for the developed lot areas and the paved areas. We were met with some constraints in those areas just from DNR and WPS regulations due to utility lines on our site. The plants that we've selected will provide great privacy and a buffer for noise and light to our tenants. For our building design considerations, we created a seamless transition with the site layout. We did this by placing lower density single-family, multifamily buildings along Pleasant Street and Village Lane to mimic the single-family homes across the street. And then as you move further into our site, we placed our higher density 2-story multifamily buildings. We tried to match the neighborhood aesthetic with our buildings and the use of exterior materials and building elements such as including dormers. Civil and stormwater, we are upsizing infrastructure to improve the overall stormwater conveyance. Doing this will help protect all buildings and parking lot areas, by creating backflow prevention. There'll be an active maintenance agreement program that will ensure proper water facilities.
Thank you again for allowing us to share the proposed SCS Ripon project with you tonight. The housing development would be a perfect addition to your thriving community. No matter what stage of life you're in, we would have the right apartment for you. With a vacancy rate of under 1%, we are confident in the demand for housing in Ripon and are excited for the opportunity to be a part of the solution. We're here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam, do you want to go over some highlights?
Yep, so a couple things to start off. So in your packet, there was a staff report with some information in it. So the background of the project, everybody should be pretty well aware. It's been in the local news and been in the works for approximately the last 2 years. So the Plan Commission did meet last week and voted 4-2 to recommend approval of the PUD overlay with the R3 district, contingent upon meeting specific stormwater recommendations provided by MSA. That MSA memo is in your packet. There's a comprehensive review regarding this property in the packet and in the staff report, as well as many of the questions or concerns addressed at Plan Commission have been kind of planned out or discussed in the staff report. Ultimately, the planned unit development zoning overlay aligns with the history of the property. It was a PUD before. There's information about that in your packet about how it was supposed to be developed. There was single-family, multifamily, park space, commercial, so it was truly a mixed use. TID 7 was approved, and it encompasses this current lot. TID 7 is currently in a $900,000 financial hole, and obviously never developed quite like had intentionally been planned. The creation of this parcel, or the use of this parcel, would be used to create another TIF district, which we have begun planning and working on. You can see that this was an original 92-acre parcel, and other phases of the PUD just haven't progressed, as we can see. The 2022 housing study came out. The city identified this property as a potential housing development. Park master planning identified other parks as a priority, and there was at that time the Parks and Rec Committee and Common Council declined to undertake park development on the parcel. So June of 2023 is when SC Swiderski, the original development, was agreed to. So at the Plan Commission meeting, there was significant discussion regarding stormwater management, flooding, and groundwater on the property. There's some information here as well, but to tackle some of those questions, we did ask MSA to come and talk tonight about the design of the overall development. So Eric Thompson and Dan Romer are here. I can turn it over to them to kind of give a background of stormwater design, as well as the utilization of, this pond and past events and what we have learned over a period of the last, I would say, 17, 18 years of this development. If you want to turn it over to...
Yeah, so Eric or Dave?
Dan.
Dan, sorry. Look at the wrong.
Can someone give me rights to share, please?
One moment. You should have it.
I do.
There you go.
All right, so you should be seeing my screen, and there's a copy of a report cover and some text on it. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Excuse me. Good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Thompson. I'm a senior water resources engineer with MSA Professional Services. I'm here with Dan Romer, although Dan may or may not need to take the mic today. My intention for being here is to present some background information that the city has acquired over the past number of years regarding the original Sandmar Village development, and to kind of compare and contrast it a little bit with the development that's gone on in very specific response to a video that was supplied of some flooding that occurred in the area in 2019. And just to kind of walk you through what some of the images in that video show, I've got some still frame shots of it and how it's functioning as far as the regional drainage and the Sandmar Pond. None of this information is particularly new. It's just been sort of put together by me and my team to kind of present it to you guys. It's all based upon a study that was completed between 2009 and 2011, kind of looking back at the original plan and then sort of brought up to date in terms of just using current mapping tools that we've got available. So I'm just going to jump right into it. You'll see on your screen there's a clip from a report by Excel Engineering. They had done a number of studies and designs in the city. This particular report was for Sandmar Village Phase 2, and it was done starting in 2009 and ended sometime in 2011. And it concluded with laying out certain development plans. And this text box that I've got colorfully highlighted up there, I'll read it because I imagine on the screen it's difficult to see. I'll just read the highlighted part. It says the original development of the Sandmar Village subdivision was in 2007. Skipping down, the pond, the Sandmar Pond that is, was originally designed with a drainage basin of about 196 acres, and it included construction of a bypass ditch that was planned to route another 730 acres around the Sandmar development. And I'll show some maps that kind of indicate what this was all about. In blue, I continue with, unfortunately, the easement necessary to construct the bypass ditch was never obtained, and therefore the bypass ditch wasn't completed. Now, bear in mind, this is, back in 2009, 2011. These plans conclude with the green text. The new stormwater management plan will install the bypass ditch in a new location and reroute 842.6 acres of the off-site storm drainage away from the existing pond and provide a bypass ditch around the pond. The bypass ditch will discharge via two 36-inch culverts at the railroad, which are going to be put in place at the time to replace a single culvert. All right, so the next slide here kind of shows on the left the watershed boundary that they talked about in their study. And in total, it's about 950 acres, so somewhere over a square mile, mile and a half about, and a relatively large area. We're going to focus most of our discussion today on what's going on in this very northern part, but I'm going to specifically call out the improvements that were fundamental to this 2011 study. And that was to construct a new culvert here at the end of Ardmore Avenue, and it's a little lost in the fine print, but there's also a berm that was constructed here to direct all the outfall from the storm sewer through that culvert and away from this pond. The pond itself originally discharged by a single 42-inch pipe, and that was replaced with two 48-inch pipes. And then down here, this is the same pond, but I've just sort of clipped out the middle of the image. This is the bypass ditch that they talk about, coming around the south side of the pond and then going out, and it's hard to read here, but that says replace the single 36-inch pipe with two 36-inch pipes to carry that flow around. I'm going to call attention here to an intention to replace, or rather remove, a 12-inch pipe that was right here. I'm uncertain whether that was done at the time. There's some evidence in the video clips that we were shown that maybe that wasn't done, and that led to a little bit of the issue with the 2019 flood. All right, this is just an overlay of the map that was done in 2009, 10, 11 with what we would map today. And the importance of that is, aerial imagery, aerial topographic mapping has come a long ways in the last 15 years. And we just wanted to make sure that the information they had available at the time, kind of stands up to today's muster. So the gray and black image in the background is the original work by Excel, and the red lines in the foreground are work that MSA did, just kind of truthing it out. So you can see there's a few areas where we're thinking maybe more drainage comes to the area, but there are a number of areas where perhaps less drainage comes into the area. So, it's all fairly well balanced in terms of the overall watershed. More importantly, the part that's to the north versus the part that's to the south, and that differentiation being the bypass ditch that goes around the pond that I'm tracing right here, again, are about the same and about what was planned for back in 2009 through 11. All right. This is a blow-up of the northern part of the map, and I've turned off the Excel map just in favor of the more clean imagery that we've got right now. And what I'm calling attention to with these big arrows are the 42-inch pipe here that was put in place, the two 42-inch pipes that were put in place, and the two 36-inch pipes that were put in place to get excess water out of this watershed relative to what had been in place before then. I've highlighted in purple here, or pink, that 18-inch pipe, or I think it was actually a 12-inch pipe, that I mentioned I was uncertain of as whether it was removed or not. And then another location right here, I didn't show this on the Excel construction plans, but the Excel construction plans show the swale continuing through that area, but the topography doesn't really look like it's a complete ditch through there. So there may or may not be a culvert through there. In any case, the existing topography doesn't show the drainage to be quite what maybe was intended at the time. Here's another view, and I've turned on what's known as a LiDAR map. So you see these thin brown lines, those are contour lines. And a contour is basically a measurement of an elevation. And if you were to take this map and walk out in the field and exactly trace this line, you would either go up or down. It's a constant elevation, so you'd be walking, a flat line despite the fact that you're weaving in and around amongst the topography. This black trapezoidal shape is the development site that's being considered today. I'm just sort of pointing it out just to give you guys a sense of where it lies in the general area of the study, and I'll come back to it at the end. This is a still image from that Sanmar Village flooding YouTube video that was filmed March 14th, 2019. That was a heavy snowmelt. We looked up some rainfall data from Weather Underground, and for that week, there was about 0.6 of an inch of precipitation. Now, whether that was rain or snow, probably it was rain just because of the warm weather, but it was very warm and it was a very heavy snowmelt. What I've annotated here with the green arrows are just items of interest. So you can see there's very clearly water on Pleasant Street here, but if you look at the culvert, now we're looking south, so to the right is actually west and to the left is east. You can see the culvert is actually flowing quite well, and you can see by these turbulence here that water is either coming through the culvert or flowing actually down the embankment of the road. So the water on the east side of Pleasant is quite a bit lower. For that matter, on the west side it is as well. But it's quite a bit lower than the road, which unfortunately is flooded, in part because water is backed up in this area and it ends up coming down the road. I'm pointing out here the unfortunate circumstance. It looks like the underground parking in this building got flooded. But I just wanted to call your attention to those three things in this view. Carrying it back to this colored map, this is the culvert going underneath Pleasant Street, and then here is the underground parking that looked like it was flooded. The cul-de-sac bulb is right down here, if you can see my mouse moving around, and you can see the little blue line here, which kind of indicates a flow path. That is kind of where some of the troublesome areas were originating. And here are those troublesome areas. So this down here in the corner is the building on the east side of Pleasant Street at the cul-de-sac. Off the image is that underground parking that was flooded out. And what I'm putting out with the arrows here is, this is sort of kind of the future extension of Ringstad Road. And you can see that the water here is quite wide. You can see the black area that I'm tracing is quite wide versus the black area down here is quite narrow. So there's some sort of an obstruction here, whether the culvert is blocked or just simply undersized. There's quite a bit of what they call head here, and that's causing the water to build up, and it's actually coming around the corner. A little bit is spilling down here, and a lot is spilling down here. And again, this is, off of the raised up part of this development. And then over here, I'm just kind of showing how this area has become sort of a quiescent pool, so to speak, and it spills back into the channel. This is the bypass channel that eventually goes around the south and east side of the Sandmar Pond. So kind of getting our bearings again, this is that same image, and I've just added the yellow arrows. So here is that culvert or extension of Ringstad Road that doesn't have adequate capacity. Here is where it flows around, and I'm kind of drawing attention to these contours here which don't come together. That indicates that there's a valley through there, however deep it is, and that's what's spilling down into this low area. And then right here is another sort of a valley. In fact, they call it a saddle point because it looks like a cowboy saddle or a horse saddle, and it can come back into the channel right there. So here's another view, and this has obviously got the pond in the background. And here is the backhoe that was removing that culvert that I said earlier on. I'd highlighted it with that purple arrow that may or may not have been removed, but what clearly was an obstruction. And you can see the water is now flowing down the slope and getting into Sandmar Pond. Unfortunately, the angle of this photo is difficult to make too much in the way of interpretation, but you can see that the water has come up to about the edge of trees here. And roughly speaking, I estimate that at about elevation 945 or 946. The 100-year flood elevation for the pond, at least the way it was designed, it's not really clearly identified in the 2011 study, but piecing together some of the calculations that were included in the report, I'm estimating that the flood elevation in there is about 946.2. So again, if this water elevation is somewhere in the 945 to 946 range, it's getting very close to the 100-year flood elevation that was identified for the pond. So, it's getting to be about to the design elevation of the pond. And I can imagine, for the folks that live here on the south side of Ardmore, that's getting rather exciting because it's getting pretty close to their property line, if not into their yard. Here's that same view, and I'm going to call out a couple of additional pieces of information. Again, here's the culvert. Looks like it's mapped here as being in place, but at least as far as the photo is concerned, it was removed. This is the pair of 42-inch pipes that now go underneath the railroad, and the number here, 949.8, that's the elevation of the top of the railroad. So if the water got any deeper, it would go over the top of the railroad at about elevation 949.8. These elevations that are written on these buildings, they're not survey information, but using the LiDAR mapping, the green colored mapping in the background, those are the elevations of what we call the lowest adjacent grade, at least as best we're able to do using these aerial survey information. So, if it's up at 945, 946, it's getting close, but there's still a reasonable amount of separation, at least as far as is mapped here. So lots of different things going on. What I wanted to conclude, I wanted to kind of bring it back to the SCS site. This is another image from that drone flight, and I'm using a purple arrow in this instance to identify how deep the water got here. And I'm going to switch back to this view, and again, there's the purple arrow, and you can see this contour line that kind of has a little double bump there. You can see there's a little double bump here, and so we're showing that the water elevation up here got to about 952. We know water was running down this road and then coming down into here, and so it was higher up here, and so we're just sort of verifying that water flowed down the slope and accumulated in here. And so this site, arguably has a history of flooding to at least elevation 952 as shown by here. And so this is the development plan, and this is an engineering plan called a grading plan. And for folks like me and Dan and maybe Alan at the city, this kind of represents how they're going to move earth around to raise the site and get it to drain properly. And so this is the ditch. And down over here is the culvert that was removed, and this is Pleasant Street with the box culvert that's in place there. And each of these lines are contours indicating what they're going to do, and they're going to do, in this case, a lot of fill on the site. I'm going to zoom in here real briefly. And again, here's the drainage ditch, the culvert's over here, Pleasant Street is over here, and you can see that the existing contours down here are about 950. This is a 951 contour, and 952 sits up here a little bit higher, and so that is where the water would flood today if we had that same March 2019 event. But they're actually raising the site quite a bit, putting it up at about 954 in terms of the elevation you'd be if you walked around the side of the building, and it's going to be elevated up to 955.25. So it's going to be, well above the flood elevation, not to mention well above the overflow point of the railroad tracks. So one of the things that we look at from an engineering perspective, I know there's all sorts of components to a development like this, including traffic and aesthetics and things like that. But from an engineering perspective, one of the things we look at really closely is how is it going to affect the regional system in terms of generating more runoff, changing how flood elevations will occur, and then of course, is the site safe from itself, so to speak. And so you heard that the development team from SES Swiderski are responding to some comments we made about improving drainage within the site to make sure that they're not going to be at increased flood risk. The site itself fits into the original 2007 development plan. Obviously, the development hasn't built out the way it was anticipated at the time, but a lot of times the way these developments are sort of accounted for is a certain development density, and as long as they stay below that density, and the density is typically defined as pavement or building footprint, what we call impervious surfaces, as long as they stay underneath the maximum allowed, and even with this development, they're far underneath what was originally planned, it should not have any negative impacts on regional stormwater. And knowing that what occurred in 2019 was certainly a significant event, but it was a result of potential obstructions in the upper part of the watershed that caused accumulations of water that wouldn't normally happen in a well-maintained, fully urbanized system. It was just sort of an unfortunate circumstance that led to the flooding that was experienced. And as far as this development is concerned, being where it's located downstream of those obstructions, and the fact that they're going to elevate this site through fill, but not impact the existing pond, it should kind of make it a non-issue as far as the local and regional flooding that's been experienced is concerned. So that's my final slide. I know there was a lot of technical information presented there. I'm certainly able to answer some questions, or otherwise just turn it back to the normal agenda.
Steve.
On your slide where you have the fill for the buildings, don't you?
Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah, right there in front of us. Don't you have to wait so many years before you can build something on a site like that if you fill something that high?
I'm not able to comment on that. My particular expertise is in stormwater and water resources and massive earthwork projects like this. Whether massive is the right word or not, but large earthwork projects like this is something that perhaps Dan Romer, also on the call, could comment on, or maybe someone with just a little bit more experience in that aspect of the project.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. Through our geotechnical investigation, we did identify this as a historic fill site. So essentially when they mass graded it to make everything level, they put a lot of topsoil in this area. It must have been, on the lower end. Flow that way. So we're actually gonna have to over excavate quite a bit. In some cases, take up 15 feet of the soil that's there where the building's going and then replace it with a structural fill. So typically they'll do that in lifts. They'll put 3 feet down, compact it, put another 3 feet down, compact it. So this is just where the buildings are gonna sit. Overall, if it's a green space, they don't require that kind of subsoil attention, but for the buildings themselves, yeah, it's not normal. I mean, in some cases it is, but typically you just want the buildings to be on a native soil, and we just have to dig down quite a bit to find that native soil on a lot of these buildings. So most of these will be on engineered fill, granular soils, all the buildings. So, and they'll he said, it'll just be the engineer specifications on the compaction densities and testing of the geotechnical experts. So.
The only reason I brought that up was generally if you build on a site, on the 7th year, everything sinks, around a building.
Yeah, we see a lot of buildings that just get natural sediment,
I'm just curious about that, because you hurry up and fill something up, and even if you use, I don't know, they call it a sheep's foot that compresses stuff and whatever, it's still not stable ground.
That was one of the things that Plan Commission that came up, like the sequencing of the buildings. Like typically when we have the subgrade soil exposed, we only do that one building at a time because you don't want any moisture getting in there. That's really what compromises the structural integrity. So if you can keep that stuff dry, it'll usually be pretty good. And I guess while we're talking about subsurface exploration, groundwater came up last time, and I looked into our geotechnical borings, and we found most cases it was 13 feet on average. I think our highest groundwater level was 9 feet down, and it's likely in this like 952 elevation that he was just speaking to. The lower elevation, the higher the groundwater is going to be. So I said the shallowest we came across was 9 feet, but on average groundwater is about 13 feet below. But that would be another factor with structural integrity if you're depth to groundwater. But it didn't appear to be an issue on our subsurface investigation. So.
I got a question for Eric. Well, first, I guess I'm assuming you can speak to this, and if you can't, then apologies. But the flood level, the 100-year flood level, who does that investigation? Like, where is that set from in a regulatory? And how often is it reassessed? And then there's a follow-up to that. But
Sure. So it's kind of a loaded question. Typically, the Federal Emergency Management Agency is they're sort of the clearinghouse of floodplain studies that have been done across the country. And those are usually initiated by a state agency. In the case of Wisconsin, it would be the DNR. They have a floodplain management section. They tend to focus on either very large riverine systems, like for instance the Wisconsin River and all of its tributaries, or areas where just because they've got a sense of heavy development, they want to make sure that local communities have adequate zoning in place. But they tend to focus on, again, natural open waterways, so rivers and streams and creeks and things like that. This pond being artificial, it's at the upstream end of a natural drainage right through here, although it's pretty heavily modified. Isn't really part of a large drainage system. I'm sure if I went back and looked at the code, there's probably something that says the drainage area has to be so large. This drainage area, is just shy of 1.5 square miles, which puts it very much on the low end of the spectrum in terms of watershed size. And so this has not been studied by FEMA, it's not been studied by the DNR. And so the reason the flood elevation that I was able to quote is available to us is because it was calculated to a degree as part of the Excel study from 2009, 10, and 11, that report that was kind of at the beginning of my presentation. And again, I don't want to put too much weight to that because I had to kind of back into that number because of some of the information and the way it was presented. And seems that some of the documentation I've got is like pieced together from different sources. So, the question is, how often can it be reassessed? As often as you want, based upon how, the community's concern is for knowing what that is and making sure that you're not, developing yourself into a problem. And I'll tell you, as part of the review of this particular development, I did a little bit of work figuring out what is the flood elevation of this pond, and given that the development is right here and this pond is directly connected via this drainage way, are they building too low, and if the water comes up, is it going to back up into there? And I was able to confirm, well, it's going to be just fine, in part due to the fact that, the overflow here is nearly elevation 950, and their development is going to be up at 954, 955. Now, that study I did was strictly to review the conditions of this development, not the regional area, but the regional assessment would be done the exact same way and just would be an expansion of the work that we did as part of this development review. And honestly, for many of the other communities that Dan and I work for, that we provide these services for, we just sort of, as a matter of course, with the developments, just sort of add things together and to keep these studies up to date. Now, with this site being, originating in 2007 and there just not being a lot of development pressure, there's not been a need to do that since 2011 when Excel did their work, and their study was in many ways established to set the building elevation here and the building elevation here. Unfortunately, it didn't work out so well apparently for the underground parking here, but there were other factors at play with that. So I don't know if I've answered your question. I mean, it's up to the city if you wanna study it and determine it and have a more accurate number, and then as things change, you update it. That's entirely in your purview.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, I don't. No, I'm good.
Anyone else? All right, Mark.
Yeah, Eric, could you just give us some broad strokes on where, as water comes onto the proposed site, where does it mainly go? I think some of the worries is maybe to the north, the property to the north, that some of the water might be pushed to the north. But my take on most of this data you're presenting to us is that it will flow south and then east more directly. Could you just kind of more specifically on the site show where those major outputs are?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to use this drawing just because it's probably the best. I don't know how clear all of the line work is on your screen, but let's just sort of view this from a top-down kind of a perspective. So again, these red lines are predominantly sub-watershed boundaries. All of these areas, one way, shape, or form, drain to one of these three green arrows. So this area here, which is the Hope Avenue, Ardmore Avenue sub-watershed, they drain via these blue lines, which represent storm sewer under the street, to this yellow dot. And this yellow dot is just a mapping element to identify, hey, this is where the pipe pops out of the ground. And then it goes around the corner and through this culvert and out. All of this stuff wants to flow, just like you said, from west to east or from north to south and go out that way. This is another large sub-watershed, and it includes Ringstad Drive, west of Matoman Street. Sorry, that's a new name for me. And then it comes around the corner and goes down Sandmar and comes around the corner this way and then connects down here and ultimately discharges almost directly into the pond. These streets are curb and guttered, so anytime the pipe can't take the water, the excess water will flow, from curb to curb line in the street, much like I showed in that video clip of Pleasant Street where the car was kind of driving down the street to the north. And that stuff will discharge out this way as well. The development site that we're considering today is right here, and you'll see there's a watershed boundary here, a watershed boundary there, and a watershed boundary there. These contours, one of the very first things I learned in my geology class in college is the water flows out of the cup. So these contours are roughly cup-shaped, and the water wants to flow out of the cup, and it goes from the northwest corner to the southeast corner, away from these areas to the north, and ultimately into this ditch and then into the pond. So long-winded way of agreeing with you.
Okay, thank you.
As I understand it, right now you have the larger culverts going under the railroad tracks existing now?
That's correct.
Haven't they put those in yet?
No, it's my understanding that they're in place. I'm operating off of information in the Excel plans. I do not have any survey information or anything confirming that, but I'm sure that someone at the city has more pertinent information or more up-to-date information.
Okay, the only reason I was asking that is if you look at the topography west of Matoman Street, all the farm fields drain down to a culvert that goes under 44 and heads that way. And that's where one of the problems was when they had the giant flood, because all the farm fields melted off and then water ran right down there. And they didn't have an adequate culvert underneath the railroad track, from what I understood. So the water backed up. That's the reason I asked about if you have adequate drainage underneath the railroad track, because that's a natural dam then.
And to follow up on that, it's my understanding that the good portion of that flooding, if you look at the current slide here, the pink arrow just behind the green arrow, there was a clogged culvert or pipe under the street. That's where the clog backed up.
Well, actually, you're right. I mean, there was definitely a clog there. That's this culvert right here that the backhoe is removing. But where this backhoe is parked is right here. And so the images show that there was, another blockage here that was coming down the cul-de-sac, was coming through on the southeast corner here, and wrapping around a little bit. Yeah.
The blockage to the south is the one I was referring to.
Yep, that's right.
Jolene.
A question about culverts being plugged or blocked. Whose responsibility is to check that? And then could that be something that the city takes on every spring in high-risk areas to check? Is that something, if we're hearing that a plug doesn't seem like a big, it shouldn't, sort of stop a whole project. It seems like it's fixable. Could that be part of a maintenance plan?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things going on with the continued development of this development in site. You have kind of different phases, right? The original installation of things that were likely undersized, 2011, after there was some negative outcomes from that design, there were improvements made. And then 2018, 19, we learned more, and we've engaged Rick Reed, the developer, about the reason for some of those things and how things were installed in that area. And that led to lawsuits with the contractor over not installing things and not maintaining them properly. So as this evolves, generally we've made other recommendations as we review the site, including, taking the most immediate drainage way abutting the site to the south and upsizing it where there was an issue in 2019. So removing a culvert there, providing more floodwater and stormwater conveyance to the pond from this site and the development as a whole. And then the city has talked about, with Rick Reed, acquiring the pond. The pond is currently owned by the developer and part of basically covenants and HOA that property owners will be required to maintain in the future. The city has talked about that. And in tandem with that, in 2011 or so, to the east of here, the city took a drainage easement from under the rail all the way to essentially the state highway, where we maintain the drainage easement and all of that property that drains to it from Ardmore drainage tube, the pond drainage tube, and the south drainage tube, all go to there. We have an easement over there. We review those, and as this has developed and we still have potentially points of concern within the development, there is a maintenance plan that the developer has submitted as part of the 2011 study. We will continue to inspect these things as we have an already responsibility to maintain the easement exiting this property. So I think it becomes a part of regular maintenance and inspection to ensure that there are no, maintenance, deficiencies, and that can be done annually, biannually. DPW can certainly make sure that stuff gets done. Surveying the property annually and just making sure drainage ways are being maintained, and then getting the developer to maintain them, or what our ultimate authority is to go in and improve it, which I believe we have done in the past, and bill the developer and abutting property owners for the work. So it's been a commitment of the city over the last, I think, since the start of this development to work within what's been designed here to make improvements. In 2011, we doubled size of things. We've taken easements. This is just the next step into it with the acquisition of the pond and the continued maintenance of the development.
So I'm hearing that can be part of the regular maintenance plan, and then I heard that, so it sounds like there are larger culverts. People are 99% sure, but theoretically, if a motion was made tonight to approve this development, it could be contingent on confirming the culvert size is indeed what we think it should be.
That's not a concern. We've had pictures of those culverts and have them reviewed, and those are what were installed. So we're not concerned about the outfall size of the culverts and what was proposed and what was installed. We have documentation of that going back to 19 when this happened of those areas, so.
I just heard, but I guess he's saying he couldn't
They
confirm
haven't
it,
physically
but
gone
we
up there
can
and looked at
confirm
it, but
it.
yeah, we can confirm it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Eric?
I guess, can we just, in summary, I hear that from the public, there is concern about drainage, and from your professional opinion, what you presented tonight, that there have been updates since the last concerns of flooding, and moving forward for this new development professionally, it sounds like you would say that this is not a concern. I don't know if you're able to say that, but is that the summary that I'm hearing from you tonight?
Well, I don't know all of the, I wasn't at the planning commission meeting, so I don't know all of the commentary. I do know that some of it had to do with concerns about groundwater, and, these types of surface improvements, over the course of a very, very long time, they can have impacts on groundwater, but they're typically quite small, and not really significant in terms of do folks have water in their basement because of high groundwater. So I think from that perspective, I don't have anything to offer. It's not going to change that situation that's being proposed. From the perspective of the regional flooding, certainly the stuff that was experienced in 2019, the presence or absence of this development would have made no change to that. That was all just a sort of a meteorological situation, and then there were a couple of obstructions in the drainage system, namely those two culverts, whatever condition, whatever they were in, whatever size they were in, that really exacerbated that event. So again, independent of this particular development.
So to summarize, am I hearing that regardless of this, this project will not add to concerns, and if there are concerns, we as a city have time to still address this and will address it with plans throughout outside of this development? Is this what I'm hearing?
I think the overall summary is the existing pond and the drainage plan provided is designed and can adequately handle the stormwater from the site. In past events, it would not have mattered if this site were here. There still would have been issues based on some of the maintenance issues or other design that we will continue to monitor and review.
That have been
over
updated
time,
since that
right?
time.
That have, yep. So where the water comes from, but for impervious surface that is piped, and part of the recommendation from MSA is to upsize the pipes on the site to accommodate a 100-year storm. That water will be directed to that southern ditch area where we intend to remove the pipe that may cause a jam or a backup of water. Remove that to get it to the pond that has adequate capacity in it to take stormwater. So that's what's summarized in your packet in terms of the regional retention pond and what the function of that is and how that works. And then it goes on to talk about the conveyance of water to the 100-year calculation on the site, the DNR NOI. So the DNR has issued their permitting for the site. And then, beyond that, like I said in here, we have the easement, and we are committing to repeat reviews of for future development of the site. So, obviously there are storm events, right, that can happen, and anything can flood. It's not like in March of 2019, this was the only area that flooded in the city. There were areas all around the city that saw significant water, right? That is just, so we are asking that, SCS design a little bit heftier of a system to accommodate that, and they have agreed to do that. So that was sort of the motion at the Plan Commission, was to approve it contingent upon that, and they have agreed to do that. So they have not had, 5 days or so to be able to work their plans. So the recommendation would be, if you're considering and concerned about that, is to just approve it contingent upon them submitting plans that are adequately reviewed and approved by, say, MSA again, that meet the stormwater requirements that were proposed in the memo. The rest of these things can be addressed as part of the project. And the TID that we have talked about developing with this project, because absent of this project, the intention would not be to really do anything here, right? Because the existing TIF district is past its expenditure period and never had the funds to assist with this. And you could see the repeat of certain things. Groundwater, again, another issue. As you heard, some of the subsoil analysis that was done and some of the research on this is a historic fill site, including what I understand in talking to some of the property owners on Ardmore, that it is a historic fill site. They may not have built their properties 50, 60 years ago to accommodate some of the historic fill there. We don't know. So there are some pumps and things. Their site will not be going subgrade with basements and things like that to need some pumps and whatnot.
I love that this comes at the heels of our housing study showing what the need is. I mean, there's no denying that the need for housing in this area is not only critical, but from what we talked about last time, for the future of the city, to continue to be the thriving city that we want it to be. So I applaud both the developer and the city for bringing forward a plan to help meet the needs of our city.
And I can just review some of the rest of the staff report regarding zoning and the appropriate. This was a PUD to begin with. An R3 is kind of the multifamily zone that also allows R2 and R1 in it. So this is a continuation of the PUD. In addition to that, in the site, there are two multifamily developments already within a block or less of the development. So there has been a proposal of this subdivision already. Landscaping plan in your packet, or that was shared, there was a landscaping plan provided. We requested that they meet the R3 landscaping zoning of the underlay district, but the PUD does not require the majority of that ordinance. And we have noted the addition of potentially 20 street trees in the site that could be planted after construction. So there was no other concerns from a staff perspective regarding landscaping. Utilities, we're working on establishing private maintenance requirements for that. Fire department has reviewed and approved that. There's an 8-inch sanitary sewer as well as an 8-inch water main servicing the project. Both of those have been deemed to be while we were planning through the St. Wenceslas project, to make sure that we had adequate capacity along this line because it does connect all the way to the state highway. So there's no additional comments or concerns regarding the utility plan or infrastructure in that area. Photometric lighting was reviewed and talked about and submitted. There are no other issues or comments or concerns regarding photometric, traffic and safety. The estimated traffic load on the project. Sorry, go ahead.
Just finish your sentence, but I have a...
Estimated traffic load on the development based on the numbers of 96 units at 1.5 is people per unit is about 96 vehicles.
I did have a concern about traffic, especially in the morning, where as residents are coming out of the proposed plan and taking a right onto Pleasant Street and then going to take the next left onto Sandmar Drive. Right now that is Pleasant Street is uncontrolled and Sandmar has a stop sign. I have a concern that anyone driving in the morning to get to work or drop their kids off will be in somewhat of a rush and would be cutting the left turn into Sandmar Drive and coming into the oncoming lane of traffic where there's a stop line for that. So I would ask, or I would like to see the possibility of maybe a stop sign on Pleasant Street, the intersection of Pleasant and Sandmar, to prevent or at least mitigate the issue of someone exiting the property, taking a right, and then continuing in a fast left onto Sandmar. I also believe that we will have issues where Sandmar meets Matoman Street, and I don't have any suggestions for that really at this moment, but I do know further up north on Sullivan Street, East Sullivan Street, we have a right turn only for a time period. I don't know if that's a reasonable restriction for a residential like that, although I guess it's the same up there. But I do just want to bring up those concerns, and I think that we should proactively address them or have something to look at before anything were to happen. Because I think it's open and fast, and there could be some concerns there with increased traffic.
My concerns are the same last Wednesday. That was my concern at the Plan Commission meeting. And I see in our packet that the plans were reviewed by the police department. And I don't want to put Chief Wallner on the spot, but I would like to ask him what his thoughts were on the extra 100 plus cars every day going in and out of that area.
Well, I think I'll let the city administrator finish up with his traffic safety comments that he has here, because he has some of these things addressed in there.
Okay.
And if you have questions after that, I can certainly address them, but I think he needs to finish up with his thought that he initially said to add.
Yeah, Bill and I, we've talked about this development going back when it first was brought forward. We've also had multiple conversations with the school, Safe Routes to School plan that was put together by the school district going back a couple years. So, you know, knowing this project was coming, using that as kind of a guide of some of the low-hanging fruits so we're not overreacting. All of these developments were developed or planned out to begin with likely this much or more traffic going through them, right? And, you know, if you look at the original development, if you put a YMCA back there, or you put just exiting out the Sandmar area and adding more houses around there, you know, there's going to be an increase in traffic, right? So 100 cars in terms of adding it to Sandmar or Pleasant, well, for, you know, that level of traffic on it, particularly when you're within 1,000 feet or so of a state highway that's seeing the most traffic and are the arterial areas to get around town, right? You know, some of these issues of increased traffic on Pleasant, what we have provided is some reasonable solutions to begin addressing them, including improved crosswalks at Matoman and Barlow. There's a cross there, there's a sidewalk that ends. We would put an improved crosswalk there, just like we're doing on Matoman up further by the school district crossing where there's generally a crossing guard. Installation of Ringstead from Pleasant to Matoman, right? That is a project that has been discussed and put in the project plan for the TIF district to put another access point out of the development. That is critical as we look at well. So the addition of Ringstead going through there is a access point out. In addition to that, there'd be the installation of sidewalk in part of major topic at the Plan Commission. We have an ordinance that specifies when sidewalks should be improved or put into a property development. This area, irregardless of the SCS Ripon sidewalk through that area to the school. That was identified in the Safe Routes to School project and plan as well. It's included in our plan. In addition to that, Tiger Drive, we talked about exiting out that way and cutting through. There's been a dedicating back the public road portion of that Tiger Drive back to the school district so it becomes purely a driveway and there isn't a right-of-way into that. Beyond that, that happened at the school district during the school pickup and drop-off times and how that can back up on the Matoman. So there already is a problem there, right? And the TID project plan also has turning radiuses and turning lanes put in, right? So all of those things are known problems. that we've discussed, we've put plans in place, we've talked to the school district about multiple times, and the creation of the TIF district allows the city to more proactively plan and execute those projects, okay, in an incremental fashion that, you know, based on priority and need. So there are already stop signs on Pleasant, right? So if speed's a concern, there's a stop sign on 2 of the intersections there. There's sidewalk already coming off of the state highway on Mount Zion, so connecting wisely to these things is what is in front of you as solutions. And, you know, what time of day do we see the most traffic? I'd have to ask Bill where they're seeing issues. The left turn out of Sanmar may be a bit of a concern, but, you know, people may move then toward, you know, Hope or to get out. So there are other options to get out of the development. This is occurs in Sanmar, which we have 9 other houses being built this year. These are still going to be problems. There's still going to be growth in the area that we will have to do these. What we won't have is a TIF district to help fund it.
Yeah, I feel like on this sheet, the Sanmar crossing improvements, there's just, I was looking at it before, the coming north on 49 Matoman and turning left into Ringstad, there's a bypass, and it kind of funnels, if the car was bypassing around a left turning car, it kind of funnels that car right back into where the proposed site crossing might be. So I know Adam was just talking about the TID district improvement. That seems like an area of concern to me, where you might have someone coming into town with a car turning left, and they're on Matoman coming in at you know, coming down from 45 to 25, and they go to pass around a car turning left, and then all the crosswalk there.
Yeah, I think there's, a couple hundred feet there between that intersection and where that proposed crosswalk that we're looking at would go. The reason that we're looking at that location is because there is a sidewalk that comes just out behind the ASC building to that we can connect to. The city also has a partial, I think it ends right about there. So that's why we were looking at that rather than the intersection of Sanmar. If you start putting it there, then we're gonna, you know, then you've got, you know, residences that are gonna be responsible for maintenance issues here as well. A couple other things I'll just add to what Adam was talking about. Anytime you have a apartment complex, generally in our conversations with the school district as well, they like to look at those locations for possible pickup spots for busing. This particular site, with the added apartments here, it's very likely that they would look at this location down in this neighborhood as a potential pickup spot. You know, proximity to the schools, which Adam is, or the city administrator is talking about with sidewalk additions, but it's very likely that they would add a pickup location down in here as well because of the apartment complex. So that's just another advice. The only other thing I'll talk about when you start talking about adding stop signs or moving things, you know, to try to get people to direct. A lot of times what we see when we start doing that, particularly when you talk about traffic control or parking control, okay, so you got to be mindful of that as you start to talk about, well, let's put a stop sign here, let's make this a no turn here. What you will then tend to see is people will bypass that and just move your problem to a different location. We see that this block to be no parking, well then they just move to the next block and then it becomes a problem there. So just be mindful of that as you start to talk about additions of those things. In my review of this with the additions that we've talked about, and as the city administrator said, we knew that this development down here, once it started to really take off with the residential area, we were already having discussions even before this project came up about concerns in the future. You know, looking ahead to see what we're going to have to do with crosswalks and addressing those things. So this is not something that simply this project has generated us forward, but these are conversations that we've had for some time concerning this area down there because of the things that we were seeing and the growth development down there, you know, in that neighborhood, which is a good thing for this community. Anytime you have that, it's important to have those discussions and to have that growth. So,
was I misremembering that there is currently a stop sign at Sandmar and Pleasant, or is it only?
And then there's a stop signs on Village Lane, both sides of Village Lane.
But also not on Pleasant?
Yep, until you get to Ardmore, and then there's a stop sign on Pleasant, but not on Ardmore. Same thing on Hope, there's a stop sign on.
I'll just add regarding the traffic safety and concerns regarding sidewalk, there's been some concepts shared. You know, those are by no means formalized. If this moves forward and the project plan for the TIF district is created, there will be sidewalk dollars included. So it's just worth looking at those as kind of proposed areas, but that is by no means a final, nor is it a indication of you know, cost share or anything of that nature for sidewalks. That will become a concern as noted at the Plan Commission as well.
And the other thing I'll just add as well to that is that when we talk about traffic control and traffic control issues, as things develop, we can always change. You know, we have those conversations all the time with DPW, city administrator, and ourselves. Hey, we're seeing a problem here, or we're getting complaints about this issue, or we're having a lot of accidents, you know, in a particular place. You know, East Fond du Lac is a prime example, East Fond du Lac and Douglas Street. If you recall, years ago, we had lots of crashes at East Fond du Lac and Douglas. I mean, it was constant. We ended up getting that. You know, we evaluated that. How can we improve that location? How can we improve the safety of that? One of the big things was we dropped the speed limit down there to 25 from 35. And that really helped us solve those safety issues at that intersection. We still have them, but not like we used to have them. So it's a continual evaluation when you talk about traffic safety and those type of issues. And it's conversations with city administration, with the neighborhoods, with the citizens up there that are having or seeing things that we're not seeing, and with DPW to make those changes. So it's a continual evaluation process that happens. It's not just once it's done, it's done. So.
Yeah, and I like to point out that the small, you know, dropping a speed limit 10 miles an hour or small things can really change that as well, because you don't really know how every piece interacts until you kind of make that change and see what the result is.
John?
I just want to thank Adam and the chief for that information. Wednesday, it really wasn't presented to us that way, and it was good tonight. It satisfied my questions, and I know you guys were working on it, but I just thought everybody should hear it.
No, this staff report is far more detailed than the previous staff report at the Plan Commission because of the concerns and because of some of the things we're working on behind the scenes regarding the TIF district and how we're operating that or planning that out. I'll just finish up. Site ingress egress reviewed by the fire department and allows for an extension of Rogers Road if we ever wanted to do that or there's a need to do that. That could be done. The development agreement, I will remind you that we have a development agreement with SCS that was approved almost 2 years ago. It outlines sale of the property for $1 and then relocation of utility line on the property, and then outlines approximately $8.8 million of spending with a $5 million increment. TID 16 has been, the council did approve beginning the process of developing TID 16, so Ellers has begun putting together the project plan. Included in that project plan are infrastructure improvements, including the well site development, Ringstead Road, improvement of Ringstead Road at the school district site, and sidewalk enhancements, park development. So while there was a chance that this site became a park at one point, the park and natural area would be moved to the pond site and work on acquiring that and putting in a park area there. That is developed in the project plan. and is likely a more appropriate place for a park because it has acted more as a park and natural area for residents in the area. And the current regulations out there generally would not allow that. So the city taking that on and ensuring that that development area around the pond, or that area around the pond, maintains as a green space or a natural area would be a part of the TIF district. And then, you know, just other development, as you can see in the TIF map, kind of other areas that we could look at developing in proximity to this. We just had our housing study. I wanted to talk about housing affordability. This is infill development. It's using only about 3 acres of a 6.5 acre site. So there's about 3.25 to 3.5 acres of green space maintained on the site. So they aren't just building a building that sprawls out. They are going up to utilities there, and the overall project base rent is $1,060, sorry, not $1,040, but that remains affordable based on our housing study, with the median household here could afford theoretically at 30%. Every category in terms of rental in our housing study was needed, and but for individuals, the average rent in Ripon is about $1,074, so this comes under the average rent that was documented in our housing study for base rent. It is all-inclusive rent, so many of the rentals that are out there that aren't all-inclusive could be with some intention, because that remains, you know, the biggest concern from what I saw at the Plan Commission. And then these other things we can look at as well.
For the SC Swiderski representatives, you said in your presentation tonight, if I remember correctly, you have an average of 1.5 adults per unit. And then if I'm also remembering correctly from the Plan Commission meeting, the proposed development, a bit about how you come to those calculations, and why did you have 3 parking stalls when you're generally only expecting 1.5 adults per unit?
Yeah, we have a standard throughout all of our sites. Unfortunately. Sorry, my bad, I apologize. So we try throughout all of our sites to meet a standard requirement of 2.5, and that's less for what we're expecting on sites, but more just for our tenants in case they want to have guests or 3-bedroom, that we're supplying adequate parking on site. So regardless, 3 is a little bit, well, more than we would expect, but it is for the tenants to have extra spaces.
Okay, thank you.
If you could, while you're up there, in terms of this dynamic of how much someone can afford,
Yeah.
you're including everything in the rent except for electricity.
Yeah, and the
which
electric
not everybody
bill
does.
is pretty low because we are paying heat, and our heat include cable, Wi-Fi, heat, water, sewer, garbage, so it's all inclusive.
And the heat is what's called hydronic,
Yes, hydronic heating.
that related to water, I'm assuming,
Yeah, I'm not sure the specifics on this.
how that works, so it's not electrical, so when you get the
Yeah,
electrical
yeah.
bill, you're not paying for the heat, which a lot of apartments, you pay for the heat.
It's a
through the
boiler with
electric.
hot water.
What's that?
It's a boiler with hot water.
There we go. I used to have one in my old Victorian house. I knew a little bit about it.
And
Thank you.
Does every apartment unit come with a parking spot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and every unit has an interior parking spot too.
Covered, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to add that, you know, rent an additional parking garage from us? So our Fulton buildings provide that option. So that is some of the extra parking as well. So if somebody wants to use it for storage, they can pay us monthly and they can have an additional parking spot or storage spot.
While you're up here, can I say grateful that it seems that you have taken requests that this city has had and you come back and you integrate that. So that makes me feel really good about you as a developer, that you weren't just pretending to hear us. You heard us, and thank you for presenting. Yes.
Thank you so much. More about stormwater than I think I ever knew that I needed to know. But yeah, it's been a really good couple of years. So we just appreciate your feedback and willing to work with us.
Make a motion to approve the plan unit development overlay zoning of the SC Swiderski LLC for the SCS Ripon project parcel as written with the R3 underlay zoning.
And with the addition of, or the contingency of
MSA.
I can, with the addition of, or with the contingency of meeting and addressing the concerns brought forth on the published MSA memo.
I'll second.
So a motion by Mark, second by John, and that's a motion that mirrors the Plan Commission's motion. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Any more discussion on the motion?
I will just say, thanks for also, I mean, what we heard tonight is that there was feedback taken, so I applaud the people from the community that brought your concerns. Thank you for doing that, and I'm grateful, I'm glad that it seems like they were addressed. They were considered and addressed.
Thank you. Any more discussion on the motion? One last time, any more discussion on the motion? Contingent on meeting the requirements of the MSA memo. Could we have a roll call, please?
Iverson? Yes. Stotzinger?
Yes.
Reamer?
Yes.
Gallops?
Yes.
Denker? Sorensen?
Yes.
Split?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-1.
Thank you. And thank you for the discussion and the help from MSA. Appreciate that. All right, moving on to project updates and staff reports.
Congratulations. Thank you so much.
Public Works?
The only thing I have to talk about really is the new building, and unfortunately with the cold weather, not much progress was made in the last 2 weeks. The last I reported, all the precast had been set and they're just starting the structural steel. The office framing is mostly complete at this point in time. I observed them putting the roof deck on the last couple of days. If the weather holds out, we should start seeing the structural steel and the roof framing members for the garage and mechanic areas go in. If we have cooperating weather, we may see the complete roof system installed within the next 3 weeks.
To house the air compressor. And materials were purchased through our local lumber yard. And I want to thank you, if you had anything to do with that, or whoever did that. Thank you.
I had the foreman and transpirants.
And the local lumber yard did get it.
Yes, the Schmidt Lumber got the work.
Great.
Thank you. Anything for PD? Adam?
Which one?
There was a water tank.
I just found out about that this morning, so.
Thank you to your staff that was out on a Sunday, from my understanding.
They have been doing, there's been quite a few water main breaks in the last month, and they've been doing a tremendous job, so. In fact, we had one on Aspen last week, Friday, that had to be repaired. The road that leads to our site.
Can you remind me if it is a weekend, after hours and someone notices, low water pressure or seemingly an issue, the suggestion to call?
And the non-emergency number unless it's an emergency.
Bill didn't have anything?
Nope.
It's just two quick things. So the project plan and the TIF development for TID number 16 has forward, so Plan Commission will be holding meetings regarding that, as well as Joint Review Board meetings, so those will be coming up in March. And then I had a meeting today with Senator John Jagler to talk about just the city and introduce him to the city. So he's our new senator from the Watertown area after the redistricting, and we talked about a lot of the issues and any, just general help that can be provided at a state level. Doug?
Thank you. I know as a matter of fact, he's already helped the fire district out on a matter that we're working on. So he helped us cut right to the chase, get the information that we needed. So he is doing some, already being involved in the community. So thanks for speaking with him.
Yep.
Anything else?
That's all.
All right. No particular communications or appointments for me tonight, except enjoy the weather. It was great weather this week. Any future agenda items or comments from council? Would anyone like to make any more motions?
So moved. Oh.